G'day guys, Tom Hollings here, co-founder of Different Drop. Welcome to From the Cellar with a very, very special guest today, Mr. Chris Tyrrell. We're sitting in the Tyrrell's winery here. Chris, how are you, mate?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, good. You're feeling all right after we had dinner last night? It wasn't a small evening.
Look, sleep's important. Didn't get as much as I would have liked, but we're here to tell the tale.
We're here to tell the tale. And go again, that's the one.
Nothing a chicken schnitzel sandwich couldn't help.
No, the sandwiches are amazing. All right, mate. Idea with these videos was we wanted to ask you to select one or two wines that I guess have a special story to tell and a special place in the Tyrrell's history and for you, and just have a little chat about those wines. I'm pretty excited about what's on the table here. We'll start with the white wine. Can you tell us what you've selected?
Firstly, do we need to address the elephant in the room, the packaging?
Yeah, look at that.
So lovely old clear vermouth bottle with a short little screw cap. So that is the 1998 vat one, Semillon. So around that era was when we were transitioning out of cork, but more talking about it rather than acting. So we were having all sorts of issues with random oxidation with the age release of these wines. So we'd go to release them at 5 or 6 years of age, and we'd run them down our bottling line with a light box and check the colour. Any that were a bit brown, anyway. So it got to the point where not just Tyrrell's, all the other producers as well, were up to like 30% we were throwing out.
Yeah, right.
Which is obviously unacceptable. And we'd done a bit of screw cap before for Qantas. So if anyone's ever lucky enough, you see the odd bottle floating around, 1983 vat one with Qantas screw caps.
Right.
And they did a little trial then, which was long gone by the time I sort of came into the business. But 1998, I was still at high school. I wasn't here for that. But they said, we should bloody do that again because these corks are shit and, fuck them off and all that sort of stuff. So they did 200 dozen vat one. That's the only screw cap bottle you could buy on like a week's notice. Like typical Tyrrell's, we're in a hurry, make decisions quickly. So they did 200 dozen, and over the years, we've just used it for tastings. James Halliday's quite often used that wine. Wine Australia use it around the world. And I think with all these things, as much for ourselves to know screw cap was working, it's been amazing to show this bottle around the world to kind of prove the point to the gatekeepers, the customers, sommeliers in Europe, America and whatnot. And it's a beautiful aged wine now, and it's just so consistent. And I absolutely love it. And I think it's kind of at the start of a new trajectory for Tyrrell's.
So I guess that's an interesting point. So it's almost this kind of line in the sand moment. Talk to us about before and after this release. So what did that one look like?
Yeah, well, I think what you'd see with the vat ones traditionally is we'd get to that 6, so the current release now in 24-17. So you'd get to that 6-7 years and you'd go to a wine dinner or you'd go to a tasting. You'd open them all before the tasting, you'd check them all, you'd chuck out 3 or 4.
Yep.
And then a few would look not as good and there'd be one that'd just be epic.
Yeah.
And that's life,
which
is not good enough, right? So now what happens is they all look the same. They all look, ultra pure, insanely good. And the little unknown thing is we had this moment where we thought, like, holy shit, we're going to have to sell 30% more. Yeah. We're not chucking 30. So do we have to adjust the pricing? Do we have to da-da-da-da? And it was a concern for a little while. We're not that good at selling necessarily, so we've got all this extra stock. But what we found was the market, people weren't having that experience. I'm opening this old Sem, getting a slightly dodgy bottle and saying, okay, I don't see what the fuss is about. So next I'll go back to what I was doing before. Whereas now we're saying repeat. And we're selling more top flight Semillon than we ever have.
So aside from just the consistency of the screw cap, which we've come to all know and agree on, like stylistically, do you see this wine develop differently now as you did pre?
It's a good question, and it's interesting looking at this today. I think that's getting to be fully mature, it's getting there, and I think it's a lot slower. And when you get to say the current 7-year release, I think the cork days they would have been a bit more buttery, like that buttered toast. Some sort of smokier characters. But now I think it's more those bright citrus when they're young are getting richer. So lemon curd, lemon butter, or rather than the toasty sort of stuff. But looking at that now, I reckon now it's come back. And that wine of a fair bit of age.
Still with that freshness though, it's amazing, right?
To me, that's like lime curd and buttered toast and all that, like a bit of honey, bit of wax. Really complex. And for a wine, unwooded, 10.5% alcohol with that much power and complexity, nothing in the world beats that.
No. Australia's wine gift, or
That's
Australia's
right.
gift
Yep.
to the world. Thanks, Jancis. No, beautiful wine. Tell me when this was released. What was the response? Do you remember from your customers?
So what I said, what I meant to say, that was never commercially released.
Oh, I see.
So 200 dozen just for us and things like today. And we have got one layer left. So what's that? 13 dozen left. 16 dozen left. Sorry.
Yeah.
So not much.
We'll take a couple of boxes.
Yeah. Although I went to a restaurant in Sydney. I won't say who. Now we're on camera, and they had 6 bottles of this.
Right.
I think there might be a customer of Justine's actually. And I think met Bruce or did a tasting somewhere and said, "Oh, bugger that! Can I have 6 of those?" And they made their way out. But
how funny!
Yeah, but for a long time we do comparative tastings, cork, screw cap.
Yeah.
And that has long outlived the cork.
I
remember the last cork order we did was for Tetsuyas in Sydney.
Yep.
Very long-term customer, great customer of ours. Has always had VAT1 on the list. The very last order of 98 VAT1 in cork went to them.
Right.
And they ordered 4 dozen, and it took us 20 dozen to colour sort to get the 4.
Wow.
And after that, we're like,
no,
chuck them in the dam. That'll do. Yep.
Where does 98 sit in terms of vintage, like quality, style?
Yeah, so
I don't recall.
Magic vintage, like across the country, right? 98. It's kind of when all the reds in SA were, it was a great vintage, but they were all Parkerized and cooked at that point. But to me, that's a classic warm vintage VAT1. Yeah. So lots of intensity, lots of power, but packed in a sort of small frame, and it's just length, like line and length that line. And so warm vintage, seriously intense flavours, but in the Semillon framework. Bloody
Compare
lovely.
that to any more recent vintages, looks similar to?
Yeah. I'd probably, we maybe 23.
Yep.
We were looking at earlier. 2014,
Yep.
2000 and, or maybe 2006, 2005. Those warmer, earlier, nice years.
Were you involved at all with helping
No,
out
I was
that point?
in year 10 at boarding school.
Yeah, right.
So I can claim absolutely nothing to that. Yeah.
When did you start getting involved?
My first vintage year, being employed was 2001.
Right.
So my grandfather, the legendary Murray Tyrrell, passed away at the end of 2000.
Yep.
And I started work. My first vintage was 2 months later. So I think that's the wine gods saying you can't have 3 generations at once, like one out, one in. That's how it's got to work. So my first vintage, it was the first one without my grandfather, who was an amazing character, right? But it was this, holy shit, no one's yelling at us and watching out. It was a bit more relaxed, Tyrrell. So everyone was obviously sad that Murray had gone, but it was an interesting vintage. I think a bit more freedom for everyone.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for opening that. That was
What do you think of that?
I love it. I think I just love seeing Hunter Sam with that kind of age and seeing how, as you say, without any oak influence, at 10.5% alcohol, and just seeing the power and the richness and the depth of flavour is quite remarkable. I agree. I reckon that's a nice time to drink it. It's not necessarily that it's falling over. There's still freshness there, but I think you're getting that full maturity to it, and it's a lovely wine to drink now.
It's like I say, it'll get older, but it might not get better.
Yeah.
It'll be another 10 years, it'll still be alive, but I think now you've got a good combination of everything. It's at the peak of its
25,
powers.
26 years. Yeah.
That would have been, back then, that would have been $30.
What are you doing differently, if anything, with the way you make that one now to how Bruce would have been doing it back then?
I guess maybe the closure's a good point to talk about with that. Yeah. So we, inherently, not inherently, white wines fermented in stainless steel are going to, have a high amount of natural CO2 in the wine, and you'd leave that in there to protect the wine because you knew, so they're not fizzy at all, but that would sort of protect the wine because you knew it was going to oxidize because of the cork, right? So we'd have a much higher dissolved CO2, we'd leave that in the wine. Now we sparge a bit of that out, so we bring it down a little bit because we found
except for the pet nat, which is coming.
Yeah, except for the pet nat. But I think in the 05, 06, which were the first years, we actually kind of went to screw. We did 04, sorry, but 4, 5, 6. There's a few of them that had a bit of gas when you heard it,
right?
But not to the point where
just a little.
And it blows off pretty quick. Yeah. So it's kind of that's one probably production element that's changed.
Yeah. But still, kind of same sort of picking regime and alcohols and.
I reckon probably not so much the difference between me and Bruce, but probably Bruce and Murray, my grandfather. So, in the 80s, 90s, they picked the Semillons really early. I think there's probably lots of things. I'm not saying there's better viticulture, Sorry, there is better viticulture, but there's also better gear. Spray carts are better. Technology's better. All those things. So the fruit's probably in better condition. And I always think, they're picking the fruit so early because if you'd see a rain cloud, they just start.
Yeah, right.
Whereas now everyone's got a bit more nerve. So they're probably a touch riper. Like instead of picking them there are some years we'd have Sams at like 9.5, 10.
Yeah.
And now kind of we don't think about it till they're like 10, 10.5, 11.
Okay.
And I think some of the best vat ones we've ever made are usually around that 11 anyway. I know the 86s is an amazing vintage, and that 86 vat one's like 11.8.
Yeah.
It's an amazing one.
And in the winery here, any difference in terms of solids or anything like that, or?
We've changed the pressing a little bit, probably. Yeah, we don't smash them around early on at the start, but no, to be honest, it's a pretty hardy kind of variety. You can't, and you don't have to do too much. Like, we press it, ferment it in stainless steel.
It's a great vineyard.
Bottle it a few months later. Like, there's not a whole lot you can do to kind of to dress it up too much. You can if you wish, but we think we've got these great vineyards, and they've been, the core of this wine is 1908, 1923. It's probably done the work. Like, we owe it to itself not to interfere too much.
Yeah. Fantastic. That's great. Thank you for opening that, Chris.
Awesome.
That's great. Let's have a look at the red. Do you want a fresh glass? Or?
Let's chuck it on the ground.
Yeah, cool. That's the beauty about being in a winery, right? I'll see you later.
We're not on the dirt floor upstairs.
All right. So
it comes with dust.
Yes, comes with dust.
Straight out of the museum.
What have you got, mate? What have you pulled out here for us?
That's the 2007.
Pre-dusted.
Yeah, pre-dusted. Or dusty.
Dust. Yeah, well done.
When we were talking before today over emails, we'll get a couple of wines from the cellar that have a cool story, as you said. And I thought maybe one of the 2007 vintage reds might be a good place, because for me, I guess in my time here, that was a pretty interesting period in what was going on. And I think we were doing some, and now I think we're actually doing a better job than back then, but there was a lot happening at that period. And I think the Hunter for a long time, and Australia generally, probably wasn't making the most clean wines, and they were, there was a bit of Brett around and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't long, that sort of turn of the century, early 2000s, we kind of knocked it on the head pretty quickly, and we kind of, we wanted to change the processes. And we did all that. And then we had a few not amazing vintages, like fine vintages. But then when 2007 came along, it was really similar actually to the one we just had, 24. Super early, super low crops, great concentration, but at the same time, elegant, fresh, da-da-da-da. And I thought, I remember talking at the time, and we were all sitting around, having beers in the afternoon and throughout the year. And
having beers in a winery?
Of course. But said, we are on here. And we kind of knew that the market kind of, in a sense, didn't know what was coming, because the Hunter had a reputation in many respects. Tyrrell's had a reputation for a certain type of wine, and we'd really fixed it up, but it hadn't quite cottoned on yet. And 07 was the type of vintage that was going to get a bit of attention from, I remember in the early days sitting down with Gary Walsh at Pino's Pizzeria in Crow's Nest, and we were tasting these wines, and it was like, holy fuck, this is it. We're here now. We've done the hard work, we've got the vintage, and we're away. And I think ever since then, it's been a pretty cool journey with our reds.
And it's funny because this is around the time when I would have first started selling your wines. Was 07, 08 vintage stuff, and so I didn't see as much of that previous era, but they've always had that purity and freshness and medium body sort of character.
It's cleaner.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, we're sitting here in front of these large format French oak casks. We had well over 100 really old ones. So in 2003, in the 90s we bought a couple, but 03, 04 was when, boom, we were buying 5 a year. So this is all from Francois Frere. There's some Stockingers, there's some Rousseau, some other things. Got the winemaking sorted. We stopped crushing all whole berry. Yeah. Went back to a fair bit of whole bunch. Had the newer oak, but big oak, so it's not oaky per se. It's just a really good time. And those 07s Tyrrells are, my father kind of, we have a joke about it, and we had dinner with some of the Cellar crew this year, and he's like, I feel sorry for you because you got that at the start of your career, and we might not see another one, to be honest. And Bruce is like, I got that towards the end, so I'm happy. And those wines are not aging there, and that's an amazing wine. That would have been $25 at Stevens. So all old vines, but just, you see how purple, it's purple. Yeah, it looks like a barrel sample.
Can I ask a question? You mentioned about whole berries and the impact that has on the style of the wines versus crushing everything.
Yep. So part of the conversation I was going down before was we had these great old vineyards, but I think sometimes the wines looked, they looked a bit developed, a bit forward when they were bottled and savoury. And we kind of thought they're hunter wines. They're got like the beauty of them when they're old is savoury and all that stuff. So how do we just preserve as much bright fruit purity, and then they will go that way. So we stopped. We'd crush them, big old must pump them 20, 30 metres to a vat, and you're actually busting up a lot of berries, and it's macerating, extracting from day one. And we thought, don't really want to do that anymore. So we now destem them. There's no pump involved. We don't even own a crusher, crusher anymore. So just a destemmer. We drive it to the fermenter, tip them in, and it's all natural ferments, or mostly natural ferments now. But so to put it in perspective, we didn't have enough space as well. So the time that they would have spent, like when I first started, on skins, total for the whole ferment is now probably the pre-ferment time. Pre-ferment cold soak. So we've gone from 4 or 5 days on skins, flogged the hell out of them. And they were a bit tough, a bit tannic, even though they were hunter wines, light, to now like up to 2 weeks. But a softer extraction, whole berry, and just getting a brightness and purity. And this was one of the first years we started doing it.
Gorgeous, pretty, mid-weight. And it has tannin there, but I mean, it's just integrating the wine. You don't see any rough edges. And I love that carbonic whole berry kind of approach for that reason.
I remember, so the whole bunch thing is an interesting one here at Tyrrell's, and if I can tell a little story. When I first started working here, there'd be people that, my memory of that is like the interns that come, so people from the Barossa or New Zealand or Italy or France. But I distinctly remember doing like a lot of whole bunch stuff, and people saying, I didn't know what I was, 17, and someone saying, oh, Tyrrell's is so old school, and like you come to Tyrrell's because there's stuff like this, and it's like what the old people do. And then you get people coming now, it's like, oh, Tyrrell's are trying to keep up with the hipsters with a whole bunch. So you can't win, right? You can't win. My grandfather was bottling wines like in the 70s and 80s, and they were labelled 100% carbonic maceration. Like he was all over it. So we've always done a bit of that, right? So it
just shows how cyclical
you can't. Your moral of the story, you can't keep anyone happy. As long as you're happy, that's what matters.
I reckon you're doing a pretty good job of keeping yourself happy, Chris.
Looks pretty fresh, that, doesn't it?
Mate, it looks unbelievable.
But fresh, but developed and complex. And
but like you see we tasted a lot of old wines last night, and some old Hunter Valley Reds, which look great, but then a lot of them, you're really seeing that development, and they're starting to go into those, real savoury kind of, a little bit more stewy, porty sort of characters.
Velvety.
I don't love. This doesn't have that. No. Like you're seeing depth to it, but it still looks really fresh. Looks like it could be, 7 years old, not 17 years old.
Agree.
Awesome bottle. Thanks again. Plenty of bling on that too. Look, love it, don't you? Gold medal, trophy.
How good a wine shows.
Just 5 trophies on this one, is
Just 5,
Just 5. We can put some more stickers
on that. We've got something out the back. We'll figure it out.
Do you have a sticker department here that just does the...
Yeah, Bruce.
Bruce does it. Every bottle he just individually stickers.
He made a joke once about the 2005 VAT one, which was very famous. I think it had 35 trophies, 80 got, and he said, we're going to fucking rebottle it all in magnums so we can fit more gold medals on it. We need more space, more real estate, more glass. It's yes. And look, and wine shows are what they are, right? I think it's I think the thing that we're proud of is like consistency. Every year you keep turning up and keep doing well.
And then you got your Gary Walshes of the world to look after you as well. But the wines really do speak for themselves. And whilst you get all this amazing press for the wines, you've got that loyal database that probably really don't care about any of that stuff.
And what matters is you open them up at 17 years old and they look as they should, right? And that's a really good drink. And that'll live for another 20, 30 years. That's not going anywhere.
So I guess just kind of quickly to wrap, Chris, you've looked at, these snapshots from the past. Feel like, how many years now have you been? 23 years?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I missed one for a car crash. Wasn't allowed back in the joint. Totaled a car, first day of vintage, but yeah.
Right, that sounds like Wade. You put a forklift through the tractor and inside this place. There's a reason I did the driving. Let's put it that way. 23 years in, you're probably just getting your head around things here. What's the future look like for Tyrrell's in the next few years? Anything interesting on the horizon, or just really more of the same?
I think it's just fine tuning. So there's things that we talk about. Well, the things that we're doing now that we started like in 2012, 2013. And I think one thing that I really like about Tyrrell's and the team we've got, and certainly my philosophy is if you're going to make a change or whatever, you don't do it now. Like you've got to put the steps out because you want to bring your customers with you.
Yeah.
So I think like our Chardonnay is a good example. So we wanted to do You know, we wanted to change the style, but you know, we're in the Hunter. It's warmer. We've got that vineyard. You know, Leopard can't change its spots. So you know, we were really enjoying Chardonnays from Margs and Tassie and Adelaide Hills, Yarra, cooler places. Like we can't make the Hunter a cool climate. You can't say, okay, you can't do that. So what are we going to change within the winemaking to help us out? So we've rebuilt that basket press. We started basket pressing half of it one year.
Yep. Within
5 years, it was 100%. Then we went to like a bit more solids. Then we weren't racking them, and all these things we did along the way, just chip, 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 chip. And then one day we're selling more VAT 47 than ever. The people who liked the old school style now liked the new one, and you had all these new customers as well. And I think I see sometimes wine brands and winemakers just change overnight.
Yeah.
Because they've tried a wine they liked. Oh, I had that Tyrrell thing on it.
Yeah.
What do you do, Chris? And then it's like that doesn't work.
No.
You've got to like chip away at it, and that's certainly what I look forward to continuing. Yeah.
Unreal. Well, mate, thank you so much. Thanks for opening these 2 amazing wines. That's really good of you. And
easy.
I'll take those back home with me now, so that's good. And mate, well done. Love Tyrrell's.
Yeah, cheers.
Thanks
Chris.
very much.
Cheers,
guys. How good?
That looks so good.
Unreal.
That is so good. Yeah.